to configure the interpreter for debugging. And I'm going to just go ahead and say this before we get started. I'm going to be using the interpreter on the virtual machine in Ubuntu, not the interpreter on my Mac. And the interpreter is the location of the PHP executable. So to do that, first in PHPStorm, you have to press Command and comma on a Macintosh. Command and comma will give you the Preferences window. In the Preferences window, under Languages and Frameworks, you will need to find PHP. Then you will indicate which PHP language level you are using. I'm using level 7. Then for interpreter, you press the 3 dots on the right over here, and you end up getting this window here. On this window, when you press the plus sign, you get this window over here, which allows you to configure the remote PHP interpreter. And I told it to use my deployment configuration. That way I don't have to enter all the SSH information again. And then deployment configuration, SSH sandbox, deployment host URL. Okay, and that's how to connect through SSH. It's getting that from my deployment configuration. I didn't enter that. And then the PHP interpreter path is user bin PHP. And I SSH'd using the terminal, and I verified when I do which PHP, it gives me user bin PHP. Okay, so let's see here. So I press OK. So now I have a remote over here. These settings look very similar to what I have in the video from last year. And main difference that I find is that here I used my deployment configuration to automatically fill these things out. Whereas last year I configured it manually, although I think I could have configured it through the deployment configuration. So what we notice here is, okay, deployment configuration is clicked. The name is remote PHP 7. It uses the executable on my virtual machine. The PHP version is the one on my virtual machine, and the debug, which I just installed before this video. I think I made a video about it. Maybe I didn't. But I installed Xdebug. Yeah, I followed some directions on the internet to do that. And then it's using the configuration file for the command line version of PHP, not the web version. And it's accessing the correct version of PHP, which is 7.0. However, it is not loading, I don't think it's loading my custom .ini for PHP, although I had the system configured to load that, but I don't know if it makes a difference. And these 2 fields here are empty. Okay, so that's what I have so far. You didn't see this, but when I clicked OK to close those windows, this extra line appeared. It's titled Path Mappings. And so now I have an interpreter and this path mappings. Now I'm going to try to get the menu again. I think I need to close this first. Command-Shift-A. Okay, go to configuration. Yeah, here I want to point out that it's essential to have this entry and deployment in order for what we just did in the beginning of this video to work. As a matter of fact, this should be set up first, and then you should set up what we just set up. I was able to add a project data source, and the project data source that I added was the Underdog database, which is on MySQL in sandbox.dev. Before I added the credentials on this page, including this port number, which starts with a 9, I went in using the command line on Sandbox, logged into MySQL as root, and added this same user, which is underdog, but this time for the host, I made it a % instead of localhost. So now there's underdog user both for localhost and for %, which is any domain. I tested the connection and it all works. As you can see, all the tables in underdog are here. And if I want to edit the connection, I just use this. If I want to add a new connection, like for example, a connection to my production server, I could use the plus sign over here. And I also have a video from a year ago, which shows me using PHPStorm version 9 to connect to my production server. But I don't want to do that this year. I don't want to have a connection from PHPStorm to the production database. What I need to do right now is set up PHPStorm to work with Xdebug on sandbox.dev. Here I'm showing the command that I used, this one, to install Xdebug, and actually this command also configures Xdebug to work with PHP. So you don't have to do that separately. Xdebug is a module of PHP. And the reason I had to install it again is because after the upgrade to PHP 7, and actually I upgraded my whole Ubuntu to Ubuntu 16. So after doing all that, I didn't have Xdebug anymore. According to my notes from last year, it says Xdebug has profiling disabled by default, and to enable profiling, I have to go into the INI settings, and each script must request profiling. I'm not sure what that means, but I may need to look into it.